Hey everybody, it's Ruben. Welcome back to my channel. So today is a real nice treat. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's episode. I am joined by a special guest. This is Mrs. Keanna Price. She is the host of a podcast called She Believed He Could. Keanna, thank you so much for jumping on. How are you today?
I am amazing, Ruben. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It is truly an honor. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. So I brought you on the show. This is actually a pretty interesting story. So for everybody here, Keanna and I go to the same church, but we didn't know each other at all. Our church is pretty big. It's Shoreline City out of Dallas. I've said this before on prior episodes. But we were part of a missions trip together, and hopefully you guys have seen that video as well, where I recap that content. And anyway, we mutually learned that we are both content creators. Now, I'm a sometimes YouTuber for now, but Keanna, you are a podcaster of
Mm-hmm.
very interesting podcast called She Believed He Could. And I would love for you to just take a minute and tell us your story. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. And what a time it was in the city of LA, Ruben. Like you and your wife, y'all blessed me so much. And so, yeah, we were on the bus ride, probably somewhere towards an outreach. And we just started talking that we were content creators, different platforms, but with the same faith and belief in God. And so we are both walking in our purpose. And so She Believed He Could originated from a mindset shift. I remember God really talking to me about my mindset and the way that I believed and the way that I viewed the world. It was such worldly, and that's the reason why I stumbled quite a bit just in my faith. And so God gave me She Believed He Could. It originated from that quote. So for a lot of women and a lot of young girls, they see that quote that says, she believed she could, so she did. And so I used to live by that quote. I had it on every little thing. And I just had so much belief within myself that I was going to be able to do all things within my power to do it. And God was really allowing me to see his hand in my life, and that it wasn't in the power that I held, but it was truly of God. And so he gave me that shift to She Believed He Could, and God wanted me to get before the people, get before his daughters, and really shift their mindset to putting their faith in God, where all things of good come from above. And so yeah, that podcast, it started with a declaration piece. I would jump on every episode and I'll say, she believed he could heal. She believed he could move mountains. She believed he could change the atmosphere. And so it just became a declaration piece, episode after episode after episode. And so now God is shifting the mindsets of his daughters by their faith, by their confidence, by their surrender. And so it's been truly an honor to get before the people on that show and really see God's hand in the lives of his daughters. I think that has truly been my desire, to really seek the women in this time.
That is so, so good. And I think that that's what I find really interesting about your content, is that you have that women's ministry focus. Now, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts. I'm going to just say that up front. I haven't listened to them all yet. I'm still getting through them. You've got 42 podcasts out there. You go, girl. But a couple of them just had very moving messages. I thought it was very feeling spiritual. But that said, like women's ministry focus, like
Mm-hmm.
I think as a male, I still found some positivity in hearing the message. So I hope you don't consider your kind of exclusive just for women, even if women's focus to it.
No, not at all. I do speak from a place of experience. I do speak from a place of allowing God to move in my life in the places that he's brought me from, or places that I've overcome. And so as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, I do speak from that place, but I definitely don't I definitely don't, isolate myself to where the message can't be reached by men. And so my husband gets very encouraged by my word. And there's some belief within my story that he holds on to just as the provider and as the head of our house. And so I definitely would love to encourage women who listen to the show, or if there's something that they're moved by, share it with the men in your life, because they have to see God's hand in your very life too at times, for them to believe, to get them through hard times as well.
So you kind of touched on this already, but I just wanted to give you a chance to continue to expand on this point. Mm-hmm. What, like, from an origin story perspective, like, what really kind of pulled in your heart to say, you know what, I got to get this up running. I got to get this message out here. How did that story evolve for you?
Honestly, it happened. So God was showing me that this is something that he's been working in me for years. But I ran from the idea of ministry. I ran from the idea that I was qualified to open my mouth and talk about Jesus, that I had been through so much in my own life, that who am I to, encourage anybody? Who am I to share the gospel? And so it really hit me at the time that the pandemic hit the world. And so that was a time where everything was shutting down. Everybody was going into their homes. There was so much chaos and confusion about their tomorrow. And so God was needing me to show up. He was needing me to open my mouth. If tomorrow wasn't promised to me, could I have said that I did everything that God had called me to do in my today? And so that is what pushed me, because I didn't know what times were going to look like during that pandemic. I didn't know what was going to happen with my children. The schools had shut down. We were stuck in our homes, and the world was a mess. We were in shambles at the thought of not being in control. And so God is saying, if you really love me and you speak of me in the way that you say you do it publicly. Get before your podcast, open your mouth and speak, and show the world whose hand is really on your life. Release control in this time. And so one of my deepest desires, and it had been a prayer for mine for many years, was that, God, when I go, I want to go empty. God, when I leave this world, when you call me home, like I want to have released everything you gave me to do in this earth. I want it to have been done. And I don't want to go before God and he questioned things that he's shown me or gave me to do in this earth, and I didn't do it. And so disobedience became a big factor in this ministry, because I knew I was Jonah for a long time. I didn't want to go and do the things that God told me to do because of the control that I had over my life. And so I had to release that. And I think for a lot of people, COVID-19 or just the pandemic in general, that was something that sat a lot of us down. It closed the doors of the churches. It closed the doors of the schools. And we didn't have control over our tomorrow. And so that was the push that I needed for my eyes to be open unto the Lord. And I haven't looked back since. I've been running to the hills where I know my help comes from.
Wow. Yeah. That's such a cool story. That's really,
yeah.
It actually kind of reminded me a little bit of my origin story. I haven't actually shared this with my audience before, so it's kind of a neat little segue here. Not to steal your thunder at all. I think you've got a great
No, not at all
story, but it's amazing that pull of God, because I had recorded a couple of things on my laptop. I had this passion since after I got saved, that I just had this heart for wanting to just spread my word, but I didn't know like in what format yet. And then it just, content creation was really tugging at my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, one day I was just praying in earnest, and I was saying, you know, Lord, I love you and I would do anything that you say. And at the time I was like way super into like playing video games on my phone.
Yeah.
A distraction where my wife would even get a little annoyed, and she would like make little sarcastic jabs about how I love my video games too much. And one time I was just in prayer, and I'll never forget it. It was a still small voice that was like, okay, well, if you love me so much, then do an episode right now. And that was just an undeniable thought in my head, right? And I knew that that came from God. And I had two choices right then and there. I could either obey or disobey.
Mm-hmm.
I made a choice right then and there that the videos I had created to get those cleaned up and post them. And I shot another episode right then and there. And since then, like, I haven't looked back. I think I still get procrastination sometimes, and that's
Yeah.
of a disappointment. I want to be more disciplined about it, but I'm still a fairly new content creator. So hope
Mm-hmm.
will keep helping me avoid those distracting thoughts and be more thorough about it. So I was able to relate a little bit to some of that story of yours as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And I think, so as far as your audience, I think you recently hit a milestone, right? I think I remember seeing something on your ground story about this. So you want to talk about that?
Yes. So I've been doing this a little over a year in time, but as a content creator, it's been a little under a year. And so we just hit the milestone of 2,500 listens or plays on the show. And so God has just really been honoring my consistency. I believe that that is where he blesses and that's what he honors, is that not only has he called us to show up, but be consistent with what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so one thing that you said that really resonated with me is that you felt the pull for God to call you into your show and content create. And I felt the push, but both platforms were virtual. Both platforms are something that people can download within their homes, on their phones, on the computer, just, something tangible. And I think that what God was showing me just with the podcast and with YouTube is that we have to go where the people are. And so if we're not consistent and we're not showing up and we're dedicating our lives to God, like, there are people that are getting left behind. And so with each milestone, I really take that back to God. I don't glorify the numbers. I don't parade around the follows or how many people are praising the idea of what God is doing. But I take that right back to the Lord and I give it unto him because it's truly his. And I know that it's nothing but God that is pushing me and calling me forth to do these things. And so, so it's over 2,000 downloads for the podcast. I remember when I first started out, I used to have like 5 listeners, 10 listeners. And I thought that was amazing, just in the little things, that if God can trust you with the little things, he will bless you with more. And I'm like, man, 6 people played this podcast when I was contradicting if I should even put the podcast out. And so over time, God is just showing me that in my obedience and in the consistency, he will bless. Nothing more for me is coming out of that, but just hearing God say, well done, well done. You have been faithful. You are pushing through the procrastination. You're pushing through you being physically tired at times, but just showing up and allowing God to do what he needs to do in me and through me.
Amen. Well, I wouldn't it be neat if you got as big as Joe Rogan, right? Well, we can all dream, but no, I hear you. I think that's so amazing. Yeah, I really do hope that your content grows, and most importantly, your audience grows, because again, I think you have such a great message to share with people, and it's definitely worth listening to. I know when I go for my walks to try to get my steps in for the day, I like putting your podcast in and listening. So I'm slowly trying to catch up. You're not quite at 50, you're at 42. So how often are you delivering content? Once a week, twice a week? How often?
Yes. So it's on a weekly consistency. So I do take breaks in between wherever the Lord leads. I have so many topics for episodes. He'll just speak to me throughout my day, and he'll be like, this is something you should talk about. And even in that, I take it back unto him, not in doubt, but more so in confirmation. Okay, is this for me or is it for the podcast? And so one thing that I'm learning as I just walk into purpose and within the show is that I'm drawing the line in the sand that when God is speaking to me and he's and discerning if it's for me or if it's for the show, because God is strengthening me. He's defining me as a person. And so sometimes what he gives me is not always for the show, but I try to show up at least once a week, whether that's with a bonus episode or if that's with a full-blown Bible study. God has really been calling me to going deeper in the word. He was showing me that a lot of women, not only are they don't have the faith to believe, but they don't understand how to read their Bible. They don't understand the practical aspects, and they're not receiving the spiritual side of it either. And so that was the latest podcast episode, Reading Your Word, Practical and Spiritual. And so it's episodes like that that keep me going, because these are things that I want to be able to help others along the way. It doesn't necessarily have to be something just for girls, but like if you struggle reading your Bible, that would be a good episode to listen to, just to distinguish, are you reading with the intent to receive revelation? I think that blessed me so much. And so, so right now we are booked out with episodes through October. Glory be to God for that. So he's been, Ruben, ever since I came back from LA, I feel like God has my best this time. Let's just say that.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super excited for you. I hope that you just never run out of things to talk about, and that you just keep pouring your heart out, and we'll trust that God will drive the numbers. So one last thing for you then. So again, for everybody watching and listening, this is She Believed He Could. This is Keanna's content. And so tell everybody how they can find you. Where can they go to find you?
Absolutely. So we are over on Instagram as She Believed He Could. We are on Facebook as well for all those who are on Facebook. But most importantly, I want to encourage you that if you listen to podcasts, you can find She Believed He Could on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pandora. We're on iHeartRadio. You can also click on the link in the bio for Instagram and Facebook, and it will take you directly to Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is the host that I utilize to pushing my show out. And so you can listen to those episodes right in your web browser. If you go to Buzzsprout and you search for She Believed He Could, you can find every episode that we have out. Like Ruben said, we're 42 episodes in, not quite at 50. And with the ongoing process of producing the show, I too pray that God continue to deliver in the way that I know that he can. And so also, if someone is interested in prayer requests, or they are looking to get a little bit more of an episode, I always encourage my listeners to email me at heygirl@shebelievedhecould.org. I would love to just be in prayer with anybody who is looking for that, or if they're just needing a little bit more encouragement from listening to a show.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my YouTube, Keanna. I was so happy to have done this with you. This is hopefully going to explode.
Yes.
And more people will be driven to your content. So again, I'm super excited for you. I see great things in your podcast future, girl.
Thank you so much, Ruben. It's been such an honor. And again, thank you for just allowing this time for us to be together this morning.
You're very welcome. And thanks for watching, everybody. God bless you guys.